Yeah, beautiful city, new background. That's where we are. So, welcome everybody to Talking Niagara. Put a new background on here. So let me just show you the. There we, there we go. The background, everybody, brand new. Welcome to Talking Niagara. Just added it up a moment ago. Um, so welcome everybody. Niagara Falls singer, performer, radio host, etc., Rick Rose is going to be helping develop young artists. A month after his death, a new scholarship named after him will make sure his work continues. So the Rick Rose Music Foundation will provide a financial boost for some high school students, a handful of high school students, allowing them to pursue music lessons or instruments.
Yeah, I think this is a good thing, very good thing. This is uh, when Rick Ross died, it was a bit of a shock to me because although I hadn't seen him for a couple of months, every time I went into 4680Q, he was working there, and I'd say hello to him. We talk a little bit,
Yep.
and so when I didn't see him for, it didn't occur to me that he was sick, and
Yep.
when he died, it was quite a shock.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Quite a shock indeed. But Rick Rose is one of those people that have a legacy in town. I think he's going to have a legacy probably long after this. It's said by the Greeks that you die twice. You die first as a human, and then when people stop saying your name, you die the second time. So those who stop mentioning him or saying his name will that is the final time you die. But I don't think Rick Roses will die. If that is the case, will die for a very, very long time. He may be live on for a couple hundred more years, actually, with his legacy that he's had and his
Well, at least for a
and
few
his,
decades. At least for a few decades, I would say, yeah.
yeah.
Okay, so his son Jake I don't know how to pronounce the name, Murray, is fitting. It says it's a fitting way for his dad to still be part of the music community. He gave back for 40 or 50 years, and the way to keep giving back is to keep his legacy going. We want to try our best to help students in music and culture as much as we can.
Yeah, this would be wonderful, and I guess the music the institute's going to keep going. It is suggested to me here in this article, which is big legacy unto itself. Of course, Rick Rose is probably one of the most successful artists that ever came out of the Niagara region, at least fame-wise. And he's, I don't know, music was his thing, and I remember hearing about Rick Rose for decades. So I don't know. I think this really is a fitting legacy for him.
Okay, so he was in a band called Lennox, right? At one time, in the 80s. The band eventually splintered with singer Johnny D going on to form Honeymoon Suite, while Rick Rose went on to a solo career.
Yeah, Honeymoon Suite was commercially successful, a commercially successful band.
I would have said that Honeymoon Suite were the most famous band out of Niagara.
Yeah, you could say that.
We've had individuals from here that have gone on to have spectacular careers.
Yeah, we've had a number of people have gone off and become part of bands, and you know.
When I said Niagara, I meant Niagara region there. Because we've got I forget what his name was. The guy from St. Catharines who went off to join one of Canada's largest rock bands. Oh, yeah, I can't. I'm drawing a blank.
You're thinking Neil Peart? You're thinking Neil Peart?
Yes, yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah. That is an incredible legacy. That to have that, and the other two lads were pretty much in that band, pretty much just suburban kids in Toronto. I remember a guy I worked with was dating his cousin or something, and he was in her house in Toronto, and in walks I think it was Lifeson, so these guys are pretty ordinary, everyday dudes. I think Rick Rose is kind of like in that same vein, like unassuming. You'd never know that he was a successful musician, and had shared the stage with some pretty awesome, well, pretty famous people. But quite often the musicians in the background don't get much recognition. He was a songwriter as well. Movie song, I think he wrote a song for a movie, if I'm not right. But he's had all kinds of different things in his career. It's really hard to make a continuous career out of music.
Plus, of course, the setting up of 4680Q.
Yeah, he did that too. He did that, and I don't know. He was open-handedly generous, I think, to a lot of people. And what?
Yeah, I was going to say, don't forget that he's a member of the Niagara Falls Arts and Culture Wall of Fame, inducted there in 2008.
Yeah, it's I don't know. He's just I don't know. He's just a really good guy, and I don't know. It's I don't know. I hope this legacy keeps him alive for a while, for a long time, and if it takes off, it'd be great. The plans they have, his son has for a sort of bringing in about 30 bands in the summertime and having some sort of a festival of some kind, similar to
that would be good for next summer. That would be good.
It sure would. It sure would be good. I mean, the last time I remember anything big like that was when Paul Amir got the Battle of the Band, or not, or the 1,000 Musician thing going.
Yeah,
I think that was
musicians. Yeah,
yeah.
And again, that's exactly the sort of thing. That's exactly the sort of event that Rick would be, proudly supporting.
Oh man, I remember talking to Rick about our show at the 1,000 Musician event when it was at Gale Center. I was talking to him. Of course, at the time it was hard for me because I had a broken hip and I had to use a walker, and I didn't know I had a broken hip, and I was in a lot of pain. But I remember talking to him about a show idea, and he was all for it. Him and his wife Rosie, and I don't know. It's I don't know. It's just a very sad fact that he's not with us now. He seems. I don't know. I know. I never suspected for a minute that he was ill.
No, and it just seems like a few months ago that he was, we were talking with him.
Yeah,
about a couple of things, right? We were talking with him about a few ideas. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember he gave us keys.
It's unfortunate that we couldn't go back. We're talking Niagara to 4680Q after the pandemic, and the reasoning was that because that studio is underneath a bedroom, it makes it very difficult to actually to do early morning
an early morning show.
Yeah. Whereas when Paul's on at lunchtime, that's an entirely different ball game.
Yeah, everybody's awake. Coming in at 7 o'clock. We could have done it at 8, but you had to go to work, and oh well.
Yeah, and that is the way it is. Okay, all right. So hey, it's Rick. I only know him a short time, but hey, what a guy, right? Always had ideas. He had a lot of ideas, not just music ones, because he was doing a lot of, he was doing designs for many of the stores on, so the the designs on many of the stores on Queen Street were done by him.
The store signs.
Yeah. I'm not saying he designed the artwork, but he executed the artwork and made the signs. Which is an important thing. All right.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Yeah. So a great loss to the community, that's for sure. All right. Okay. So moving on from Rick. So there's a question about the shutting down of what are called safe drug consumption sites in the midst of a historic overdose pandemic, and the complaints are that this will not help anybody thrive.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff here that I don't want to say it's overstatement, but when somebody says, "Oh, well, now you're going to kill a whole lot of people because you're shutting down these drug sites," there are safe drug sites, injection sites, which I agree with myself, but it's the location and the funding that's the problem. What we find here is the Ontario government is closing down safe drug injection and smoke. Well, they don't have smoking sites, but injection sites anyway, so that somebody can use their drugs and be in a safe place in case they have a problem, and then they can be saved if they have an overdose or if bad drugs are in. They can be advised about drugs, about what the drugs they're taking. We know they're going to take the drugs. We do.
Yeah, we do.
If they come to a safe place to do them, then they're much less risk of dying, and they'll sooner or later they may get a chance to get off the drugs and lead a normal life. But if they're dead, that ain't going to happen.
Well, Ontario
plus those people who argue against the closures are saying that this is going to cause a great deal of death, and people have said they've witnessed people not showing up and dead, and saying things like someone dies every 3 hours from an overdose. On the other hand, the drug sites are quite often a disturbance in the neighborhood. A young woman got killed. A mother of 44 got killed when two drug gangs started shooting, and she took a bullet, and one of the main perpetrators got away. I think public safety has to fall into this, so they don't want these drug sites.
The question
is anywhere near schools or
exactly. And there are currently 17 provincially regulated safe drug consumption sites, but it's those that are within 200 meters of schools or daycare centers that will be forced to close at the end of March next year. So at least 10 of the current sites will be shut down, including 5 in Toronto. And I get that, because basically you don't want that within that distance, within a safety margin of schools and daycare centers.
Yeah. Now, the one contention is wherever these safe drug injection sites are is a center for crime. The argument is more and more crime happens closer to these safe injection sites. The counter to that is it hasn't been proven that is the case. Yeah. But it is. But in the public mind, when you get a lot of drug addicts in the same spot doing drugs, what you would normally have showing up there too are those people who sell the drugs. It'd be the drug addicts, the criminals, or the drug dealers who are the criminals. So normally, like if you're going to, where else you're going to? It's a good place to sell them, isn't it? Close by to the safe injection site.
I guess. I would have thought that many of these safe consumption sites are supposed to be that they're the ones who supply as well.
No, and that should be. There is some places I think that do try to supply opiates, clean opiates, or other drugs that you can be assured of not dying of. But that's not the reality, I think, in the most part. I think that really should happen.
I thought that was one of the ideas behind setting this up. That if you could reduce, if you could reduce by half the numbers of deaths because of bad drugs, so to speak, that you were actually winning, were helping win that war.
Well, there's two sides of that argument. Now, I personally think that clean drugs should be provided to addicts. That would cut out the dealers. They'll cut out the dealers, and they're the ones that cut the drugs into 2 or 3 different compounds, which makes them much harder to withdraw from. I didn't know that. So if you take fentanyl and you cut it with a couple other different things, tranquilizers, whatever else, then when that addict tries to withdraw or tries to get off the drug, it's much harder because the withdrawal is harder coming off of a mixed drug than it is from a raw fentanyl or a raw opiate.
Yeah. And because they're cut with a mixture of other things, you don't know what is going, well, the danger is, there's a lot of other stuff that actually some of these things are quite dangerous.
They are. And they are, and oddly enough, if you take pure opiate or pure fentanyl, it's a healthier choice. And I don't, you know what I mean? But
I know, and where every choice is unhealthy, it's a healthier choice. Yes,
that's right. It's the best of a bad world, and but there's 2 ways of thinking of this. The conservatives, of course, are thinking that we have to start to criminalize it again, and we saw the disastrous effect that opening up decriminalizing drugs in Vancouver, what had happened there. They had massive amounts of crime, people injecting and doing drugs everywhere out in the open, and people getting arrested and put right back on the street again. So it did not work. I think the idea is a good idea, but it has to be. I think it has to be tied to addiction withdrawal. I think the government should say, okay, we will give you your drugs, but you have to enroll in this program, and you can't leave this site. You have to come here. You have to go to this dormitory, and we'll give you drugs and reduce the amount slowly but surely, so your withdrawal is not that bad until you're clean, and then let you out. But we will give you clean drugs on the way down. So I think that would probably be a good approach. I don't know how you can do that, because you have the legal right to come and go as you please, no matter who you are. Oh, hello there. Hello, hi, Slick. Just staff drugs. That's easier said than done. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with you. Stay off drugs, problem solved. But that is also very much easier said than done, as we all know. And the challenge with that is, of course, that it's many of these people, many users are actually not thinking right in the first place. Anyway, their reasoned mind has long since gone.
Yeah, they don't think the same way as we do. They're always looking for. Think of a person that's extremely thirsty all the time, and what is their one thing on their mind all the time is to get water. And no matter how much you talk to them, no matter how much you say one thing or another, they're going to always look for that water, no matter what it is. That's going to be the number one thing on the top of their mind. So all other things fall off, and their whole life is now looking for water. In this particular case, is drugs, and we have to remember that drugs are proficient throughout all our society here. Most people who take recreational drugs don't get addicted to them. when they checked the sewer water in London, looking for diseases and stuff like that, they were shocked to see how much recreational drugs show up in the sewer water between Thursday and Sunday. It's particularly on the weekend. So they can see a certain amount of recreational drugs being used throughout the week, and that's evidenced in the sewer water. But with that sewer water on weekends, it explodes, which tells you that there are weekend users of drugs, and these are probably the ones the most vulnerable to actually become addicts eventually.
But again, that sewer water also probably is up on things like beer and alcohol as well.
Yes, quite true. But that we know about. We didn't know about the incredible amount. I mean, the reason why it hit the news is because of the volume of recreational drug use surprised everybody.
Yeah, exactly. All right. So the question here is that they're basically investing about 378 million into homeless and addiction treatment services. And despite what is said by the argument, in fact, the government is saying that they're not, that while they are closing some of these safe consumption sites, they're supposed to be reopening new ones to replace them that are away from schools and daycare centers.
Yeah, and like say the Conservative government has of Ontario has said that this none of this is working. None of this is working well. It's increasing crime, and that the other argument, of course, is that they're saving lives and keeping people alive, hopefully until they can deal with their addictions. And it says here that someone who so you're going to have the problem is any attempt to deal with drug addicted people, you get a terrible bunch of people acting terribly, like when they came out of St. Andrew's United Church, when there was a place for them to go there, people to go at night, and the first thing you see is all kinds of drug paraphernalia. They don't pick up their garbage. They're dirty. They're sloppy. All these kind of things, and that, of course, is a result of their addiction and how their minds has been changed. The average Canadian does not throw their garbage on the around or act in ways.
That has actually been one of the worst issues about homelessness, is the actual garbage that's just strewn around the grounds wherever you know that homeless people can collect. There tends to be 3 or 4 times as much garbage as there is in other areas.
Yes, and also, well, another argument, and I just passed this as I was looking at the article. Another thing that safe injection sites would ensure is that HIV doesn't get spread among users. Now, unfortunately, we are in a crossroads here. How do you deal with this? The Conservative and many people feel that having a drug site, safe injection site, promotes crime, because of course the dealers would be there, and it helps people continue along the path and not seek treatment. The Conservative says, well, we're going to boost treatment and ignore and try to reduce the amount of safe drugs. I don't know. You probably need some sort of in-between measure.
You need both. I think you need both treatment and safe sites. And in fact, treatment centers need to be associated with safe usage sites.
I think the safe usage sites should be in an area almost outside of town, though. And
easier said than done. How are you going to get there? You know what I
Offer
mean?
them a bus ride there.
Yeah. No,
You know what I
it's not
mean?
going to work.
Something like that. But
It's not going to work.
No, it probably won't. But when you have something like that in town, you definitely are going to attract crime. I don't care what anybody says. You can't prove that. Yes, you can, because drug addicted people attract dealers, and dealers are criminals, and sometimes very terrible criminals, as evidenced by the fact that this young woman was killed when the drug dealers had a shootout.
Yeah, I know, and you know that's an absolute tragedy that she was killed, and we're not denying that, right? Not denying that at all. It's just the question here is one of the problems that this potentially could cause.
Yeah, which leaves us. Karen. Hi, Karen. Karen has joined us. How you doing today? There has to be some other solution. Obviously, giving safe injection sites and even giving safe drugs is not working. It hasn't turned. What it has done is it saved many drug users from overdose or from death, because there's somebody there to be able to call the ambulance if they come. But those people quite often don't seek rehabilitation of any kind. On the other hand, if you catch a drug addict and he's got to go to jail anyway, you can offer him a treatment program. So if you decriminalize it, you can't send him to jail, where he or she is more likely to get off the drugs through a treatment plan. Or do you let them?
I've seen argument about that treatment plans through jail don't work. That they come out of jail just as bad as they went in.
I would suggest that many of them would just go right back on the street and start again. But that's the same as Alcoholics Anonymous and all other substance abuse programs. We had one in our union. We had we have a part of our benefits was, if anybody had alcohol or drug problems, they could go to a treatment center and stay there for about 3 months. What happened though is one of the guys I knew that went, we had 2 guys that I talked to that went to, I don't know how many we sent, but I know 2 of them. One found a way of escaping, and him and the others found a way of escaping, getting out in the street and getting back in at night and not being noticed. So their drinking problem never changed. And another one learned techniques of hiding his abuse.
But again, ultimately, okay. So Gary makes the point that we need better judges. To be honest, they let the dealers out of jail to ensure that's insane, and sell it. That's absolutely insane. I agree. The other aspect of this is I had a friend who died recently, unfortunately, but she spent 40 years dealing with recovery. Right, she was in the recovery industry, and basically, in the issue about recovery and getting out of this is that basically you've got to start by admitting that you've got a problem. Doesn't matter whether that's alcoholism or drug addiction, you've got to start by recognizing you have a problem.
Well, everybody's known that for 100 years or more, and just saying it doesn't work.
No, I know, but the problem here is that it's the individual. The resolution has got to come from the individual ultimately.
Well, it needs something like Alcoholics Anonymous, which has reformed a lot of alcoholics, but they have a community and they have a group, and they meet, and they help each other stay off the alcohol, which has ruined their lives up until that point.
Yeah.
And I don't know if we have the same thing with
drugs. There have been Drugs Anonymous programs. That's for sure.
Well, certainly, and I've talked to people who've been on them, you know, but in fact, they even have Overeaters Anonymous, basically.
Yeah,
they have that too. it's a very, very hard thing, though. Once you you need that community to help you stay off. The problem with addictions of these kinds, they're very hard to get off of. And and I think that a drug dealer really should be treated as the next thing down from a murderer, because they sell death, basically. And they're the ones that are carrying guns. They're the ones that are shooting everybody, and they're the ones that are supplying this to our population, and they should be severely punished, which they are not. Lori Parliament, one of our listeners, says admitting you have a problem is only one step. You have to figure out what was happening in your life at the time you started using and resolve that issue first to move forward. Not always is it a tragic situation that brings people to drugs. And as I mentioned before, recreational drugs are a thing all over our society. And most of the people who use recreational drugs are not addicted, but they are the ones probably most likely to become addicted because of the allure of the drug itself. So sometimes people take drugs or drink because of problems in their life, but others just do it to party on. And unfortunately, that's we've already helped them along by legalizing marijuana, but by decriminalizing heavy drugs, I think the drug dealers should be severely treated, so that there's a deterrent among those who deal drugs, but also the education at school level. I remember them trying to tell us about drugs in school, and the teachers had no idea what they were talking about. And being kids, and we'd already known all about what has been happening on a street level, or have some idea. The teachers were clueless about what's happening, and they were saying things that they didn't know anything about. I think, but they did get smart. They brought in a couple of ex-heroin addicts into our school one time and talked to us about their life, and how it had, that was part of the recovery program, was to talk to kids. And I think in school, you have to be clear to the kids. You want to take fentanyl, you're going to feel really good. You're going to like it. Even if you drink alcohol, you're going to like it. Most of you are going to like it. If you take a joint, you're going to smoke it, you're going to like it. Most of you are going to like it. Fentanyl, opiates, cocaine, you are going to like it. It's going to make you feel really wonderful. But that's the trap. It doesn't last. And once you get addicted, this is what it's going to do to your liver, your guts, everything. You're going to make you older before your time. All those other things. They have to be straight out honest with the kids. They can't just say, "Oh, cocaine, fentanyl, bad, bad, bad," and say that you're doomed if you do. You have to be very honest with them. You have to say, "Yeah, fentanyl is going to make you feel wonderful, but it will ruin your life. So will any kind of opiate or cocaine use." And it's still not going to stop a lot of it, because recreational drugs are so prolific in our society. But I think it has to start with the education thing, and people have to be absolutely honest, because if they're not, if you come up and say, "Oh, drugs are really bad, now you're going to kill you and everything," and somebody takes a snort of coke, it feels like $1 million.
Well, this is actually where my friend started. She didn't tell me too much about it, but she basically was she was in Europe. She was actually with a band, and again, she didn't tell me who, and I didn't go looking up, because if she'd have told me, it was not relevant to the story, right? She was with a band. She was a singer on one of these bands who were touring Europe in the 70s, right? And as a result of the touring, the bands, etc., they were all on drugs, right? And
yeah, that's very, very typical of a band.
she basically OD'd in Europe, and as a result, she returned to the US and was on recovery ever since.
Yes, and you don't know what kind of damage, irrecoverable damage, she had when she had the overdose.
Oh no, she basically, she said it changed her life when she had the overdose. Right, she could have died, and at that point, basically, she vowed to change her life.
Well, she's a lucky one, isn't she?
Yeah, she is. She is a very lucky one, right?
What happens to most addicts? What happens is the effect of the drug becomes less and less, and that euphoric state that you get when you draw a line of coke or do some fentanyl becomes harder and harder to achieve.
Yeah,
and as you become more and more used to the drug, you're still searching out those initial euphoric states, the wonderful feelings you got from the drug in the first couple of years you use it. Then it becomes harder and harder to get there, and then after a while, you just keep doing it and trying it, and then you add things to it. You might drink and take pills and do anything. If you can't find it, you might you have people going into the stores and buying Tylenol 1 because it's got some codeine in it, or some small amount of opiate, and you eat the whole bottle of them, and you drink a bottle of whiskey with it just to see if you can get somewhere near that state that you once had felt. And that's what overdose quite often happens, because when they take the first, I know somebody whose stomach was full of oxycodone when they died on a subway. And that's because probably because the first ones didn't kick in or didn't have the same effect that they normally would have, and they just ended up overdosing because that it didn't kick in fast enough.
Yep. All right. Yeah, and it leaves us in a really particularly bad way. But anyway, let's move on. So the RCMP is investigating after bomb threats were sent by email to Jewish institutions across Canada. However, there's an interesting twist to this story, because the email was sent about 5:11 a.m. To roughly 125 Jewish communities, and but they were also aware that Indian media outlets reported that an email was sent to at least 100 hospitals and companies with government institutions in Delhi, saying pretty much the same thing. So there's
it's nearly an identical email.
Yeah, nearly an identical email. So there's some at least collusion going on, likely, between two groups.
Maybe it's the same group. Could it be? It may be Indian Muslims that are doing this, and of course we have a lot of Indians in Canada. It could be Indian Muslims doing it. I normally, a thing like this comes from white supremacists. We find threats to the Jewish community on and off for a very long time. It just keeps going and going and going. There's an undercurrent of anti-Semitism in our society, but that's usually comes from the white supremacist types.
Yeah.
But in this particular case, it's very peculiar because it's coming. It seems to be tagged two places at the same time, identical messages, and the ones that were sent in India were to places that did business with Israeli or Jewish companies. I'm not sure if it's Israeli or Jewish companies, I think. So the hospitals and everything might have dealt in business. I don't think there's a whole lot of Jewish minority in India.
Well, there's a Jewish minority in most countries, but yeah, they're probably not as big as somewhere like Canada. Yeah,
it'd probably be very small in comparison, and not not deemed a threat to which white supremacists think.
Or even, not deemed a threat to even Hindu supremacists, because that's one of the big problems they have in India right now, is those who believe in supremacy of Hinduism.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, we're getting Indians coming to this country who are Muslims that are claiming refugee status because they feel that they're threatened in their own country. So the Canadian government is actually,
and of course the Modi government is doing nothing to stop that.
No, you're not. Modi depends on a strong Hindu backing. Unfortunately, when I was in India a little while ago, the Muslim population, although I think it was around 2% when India was formed, it's rapidly increasing. And that seems to be a threat. That feels to be a threat to the Hindu population, who are trying to reduce their numbers because family sizes, and the Muslim families are not. So the Muslim families in India have grown to 16%, which seems to be a big threat to the Hindu population.
There's somewhere in the region of 200 million Muslims in India.
That's right, and.
Compared to
I don't even know how they coexist, to tell you the truth, because they are
many of these coexist. Many of these it's even in 1947, many Muslims lived in the same towns as Hindus. They traded with Hindus. Their families were good friends and that sort of thing. In 1947, it's only a small percentage of Hindus people crossed the border from Pakistan to, and yes, it was large numbers, I agree, but there was only a small percentage of the total Muslim community in India left.
Well, I'm talking about that Muslim population is left. Is deemed as a threat more and more by the Hindu
absolutely
population.
Wrong about that, but again, this is threats against synagogues, and we're talking here about in India they're talking about threats against synagogues and Jewish businesses.
Well, it didn't say anything about synagogues in India. It said more about institutions that did business either with Jewish companies or Israeli companies. I'm not sure which ones, but that was the focus in India. Here, it was the target areas were Jewish synagogues and community centers. And it wouldn't bother me so much. It does bother me a lot, but I wouldn't take it too seriously, because there's always somebody raging against the Jew or a Muslim in this country.
Yeah.
But in this particular case, it's 125, and they've claimed they're going to drop explosions or explosive devices in and around there. The police have had to use. Now, this is a drain on our resources, of course, because the police have had to go into each one of these institutions and make sure they're free of explosives.
Yeah.
Whoever this is, I would really like to know in their motivations. I have a feeling it's just a crackpot that's doing this, and he or she has some kind of connection with India. He must have some computer smarts too, because they can't trace his IP address, and that would be telling if they could. But he or she has somehow delivered these messages, and they can't trace his IP address. So
he's basically gone onto it. He's using a dark web hidden email, hidden an email service that takes away all of the metadata for the sender.
Yeah, and so like
the dark web, these services exist on the dark web.
So that means he has some sort of computer literacy, at least.
Yes.
And a little bit of sophistication that way. If it's just an empty threat, I mean, they're a dime a dozen. However, unfortunately, each one of these has to be taken seriously.
Oh,
You
absolutely.
don't want anybody killed. You don't want any property damaged. It's a foolish,
Yeah.
foolish thing to do. Um, you know, even if you have a whole lot of hate on going on for the state of Israel right now because of the Gaza massacres, it still is not going to get you anywhere like that. I mean, half the Jews in this nation are against what's happening in Gaza. You know, most of the prominent spokespersons against what Israel's doing are people like Noam Chomsky, Gideon Levy, Elon Pepe. These are all Finkelstein. These are all Jews that are against what's happening in Gaza. So to threaten Jewish communities on about what's happening in Gaza is a non-starter. Basically, it's just makes things worse.
It's ridiculous. Yeah. Yeah.
No, I'm assuming that's the motivation, but it might be just pure and unadulterated, run-of-the-mill anti-Semitism that seems to continually reoccur in our society.
Yeah. Yeah, and well, it's disgusting.
Yeah, but it's there and it's a disease, and I don't know how you get rid of it.
Yeah, it's a disease.
Well, so is Islamophobia. I mean,
Yeah.
I could tell you in my experience, I've heard all kinds of dissing of Muslims, but I've heard almost nothing no dissing of Jews in my life in the last 20 years or so. I've heard all kinds of slurs against Muslims, but almost none against Jews. In fact, I can't even think of one that I've heard.
Some fanatics feel that emotional trauma is as important as physical trauma.
I guess so. If you're a Jewish person, you're going to go to your synagogue or your community center, that's always going to be in the back of your mind, and that person who has put that fear in the back of the mind of Jewish people trying to just be Jews, I mean, it's sinister. He or she knows that. That every father and mother taking their kids to the synagogue, you gotta worry: is the thing going to blow up? Is it safe to take my kid to the community center so they can play basketball or whatever they want to do?
Yeah.
So I don't know.
That's terrorizing our society.
Yes, and that is a form of terror. And Karen, thank you for that, because that's quite right.
All right, moving on. North Carolina is polling very close amid the Republicans, so much so that basically Trump has made his third visit in the last 4 weeks to North Carolina, a state he won twice and where he was solidly leading President Biden in polling over the last year. But since Harris has come on board as the Democrat candidate, he's slowly potentially losing.
Yeah, that was a state where they thought they'd only have to visit once or twice during the campaign, and they figured it was all sewn up. The Republicans thought it was all sewn up. But because of the sudden rise in popularity of Kamala Harris, that they're no longer assured of a win. So Trump has had to go back there several times to keep his make sure that they do win. He's not going to make the mistake Hillary Clinton did, who didn't visit the states she thought that were assured to be Democrats, and to her surprise, they went Republican. And in retrospect, it was probably because she didn't bother visiting them at all, whereas Trump had. So Trump's not going to make that mistake. He sees that North Carolina. He sees that North Carolina is slipping, and he's going to make sure he gets there and makes multiple visits there, which he has done. But that is an indication of what's happening in America right now. Now, I'm not so sure that Harris is going to be as popular now as she by the time the election comes, because remember, she is one of the most unpopular vice presidents ever. She was always in trouble for
but
things
is
she
that
said or whatever else, and now she's being recreated. I don't know if that will erode or not.
Is that unpopularism, if I may coin that term, a result of pro-Trump fanatics who have, or white supremacists or anti-female fanatics that have had, that have just everything she's ever said that's wrong, just because she's vice president, that's wrong. Is that the real situation? Now that she's come out and she's on the campaign trail, you're seeing more of the real Kamala Harris.
No, I think it's more of a fact that people are elated that they have somebody they can vote for that's not going to die or become completely incoherent within a couple of months of being president.
Yeah,
I think even Democrats were very wary about Joe Biden for many months, and as I've said long before he retired, he's not going to run. He can't. Somebody's going to step in, and that's exactly what they did. They stepped in and said, "Joe, the donor class has turned their back on you. You've got to back out of this." And him giving endorsement to Kamala Harris give all the Democrats a big sigh of relief, and they've got somebody that they can vote for and hope that the sort of Democratic initiative that Biden may have started continues. So you have the whole, however, I don't know how long she'll be able to last. And her biggest threat, if this is going to be a close race, as everybody is looking at it now, it's 50-50 right there right now. And a few thousand votes may make the difference for her in places like Michigan, where they have a large Arab population. And what are the uncommitted votes they're saying there is, Kamala, you can't hide. We won't vote for genocide. So her hands are bloodied with Gaza, and she can't, and she has to make distance between that, and in order to get those few votes. It is going to be a tight race, and if Trump starts to make very clear that these wars are extremely costly, the Ukraine war and the Gaza war, and he can fix it where Biden couldn't, and we see that Biden can't, that Netanyahu snubs him at every turn, and they can't get that peace deal because Netanyahu will never come out on the stage and say, "I accept this deal." It's always Blinken saying, "Oh, Netanyahu accepts it," but Netanyahu never says that. And and so Biden and his administration comes across very weak. So there's some of those people out there will vote based on that, but mostly it's going to be based on the economy, of course. And right now the economy is taking a plunge. Karen Fraser, our listener, says Trump said that due to his political past, he is entitled to sling as much mud as he wants. I think he is. To tell you the truth, I think he is.
It's the American way.
Kamala Harris can sling as much mud. As you know from the Democratic convention, they were slinging all kinds of mud at Donald Trump. They didn't hold back at all. So mudslinging is a part of campaigning, unfortunately.
Yeah, it really very much is a part of campaigning. This is going to be an historical election anyway, nonetheless, because there's a woman running for, it's only the second time we've had a woman running for the top office.
Yeah, it's a woman of mixed race.
Yeah.
And she's balanced that by getting a whiter male running mate who is like your typical suburban dude. He goes hunting, he goes fishing, he wears a camo hat. He's a good father. He served in the nation's military. I mean, you can't get a more whiter than white guy than that. Your typical sort of white stereotype. So she's balanced herself very well there. It was very, very intelligent work. But can she sustain herself? And the biggest problem with Kamala Harris right now is she has no substance in what she has been saying. She just runs around saying, we have hope, we have hope, we have hope. That's a really good marketing strategy. But when people start to listen to what her substance is, so far she hasn't delivered. Yeah, I think Trump will probably use the declining economy. Looks like we may be going into a recession soon. Affordability, inflation, and the forever wars that he will say that the Dems got us into.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, yeah, he's going to say that. We know that. Absolutely. I'm not going to say anything about where we came from. Keep my mouth shut was a better option. Okay, so Niagara real estate market is experiencing a slowdown year upon year for July, comparing July 24 to July 23. Last month, 500, according to the Niagara Association of Realtors, last month 503 homes were sold in Niagara region compared to 522 sold a year beforehand. But again, even that, I wish they'd have actually put in the statistics for 2022, because I think 2022 was a peak year for home sales in Niagara, both in prices and in terms of the numbers sold. So I bet even 23 was down on 22, right? And the other thing is that in July, 1,280 listings were added to the market compared to 1,345 for July the prior year.
It's very odd that people are probably thinking, oh, great, real estates are down. Real estate is down. Normally, that would be an indication of the economy going bad, but it might be just because it's adjusting to more realistic prices, and the houses are the housing market is beginning to turn back to what it should have been normally. I don't think.
Well, I think we had an exceptional high in 22, right? That's for sure, right? And now we're probably down to about what the housing prices and market probably should be.
Yeah, and the fact that people are investing a lot in real estate, so you get a lot of people from the GTA come down here and bought houses and don't live in them and rent them. There's a guy that lives close to me here who's the house went up for sale, and I don't know, it's New Canadians bought it basically because I hear they're talking, but they only come on weekends. Mm-hmm. They don't stay there during the week.
Okay, the other thing about it is the average time to sell a house is up from 32 days a year ago to 42 days now. And there are some houses that were up for sale for quite some time.
I don't think that we're going to get much relief, though. I mean, this might be a small adjustment, and it might slow down from time to time here and there. But the fact of the matter is, the demand for houses are incredible. And we said it before here that the amount of immigration and the amount of houses don't match. 200,000 houses built a year does not match 500,000 people coming a year. You know, it doesn't make up. And we have, of course, a lot of depression among young people now who can't buy a house. They have a good job, they have good salary, but the houses are beyond them because their salaries are matched what everything else is done in inflation. The one thing that's out of inflation is housing, which spiked way up and has gone way too high.
Yeah.
So you can still afford a car, you can still afford a washing machine, but you can't afford a house. Yeah. And that's the difference between my generation and my son's generation.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So also the other thing is house prices are about 22,000 lower than they were in July of 23.
Yeah.
But again, they were significantly lower in 23 than they were in 22.
Still, I think this is just an adjustment because the sort of panic to get houses and stuff like that happened, and a bunch of investors coming in from outside the city. Remember, we've had 10,000 more people in just a couple of years in Niagara. I think since 2023, or is it? I don't know. I remember reading it recently. So we have 10,000 new people. 10%. You know, I mean, you're going from 70 or 80,000 to 90,000 in a year, so that it usually takes a while to do that. That was a big jump and a big demand for housing.
Yeah,
and
well, we've gone up from 89,000 to 99,000 in Niagara in the last probably 7 or 8 years.
I think it's more than that. I think it's less time frame than that.
Yeah, probably less time frame. But with all the new houses, new estates out there in the western part of the city or southwest of the city, you know.
Well, it's mentioned in the there's an article we won't get to today, but it's about the budget and how the city council is going to approach the budget and the increases that the staff.
I was looking at that and thinking we're going to end up with that on Monday. Right?
Yeah,
we're going to talk.
But in that article, it tells you how many people have come recently to Niagara Falls. If I can just get it quickly, I'll. Of course, I can.
Yeah, and certainly there is an increase in the numbers of residents in the city.
Yeah, I'll just. It's here somewhere, and about and it talks about all kinds of things. But one of the things it's talked about somewhere in here, if I can find it, is how many people have come into the city, which is straining our resources.
Well, the population of the Niagara region has also gone up from about 440,000 to now around about just over 500,000, although these statistics have not yet been officially reflected in the official figures.
Yeah, cost of living. Well, it's all kinds of things they're trying to deal with, and one of the things is increased population and how that's affecting our services. Of course, they're talking about the firefighter deal, the burden of taxpayers, so on and so forth. It is somewhere in this article.
Yeah,
but I can't.
We'll deal with that Monday anyway. Right, but basically the question about the bank. The other thing, of course, we shouldn't forget is the recent Bank of Canada interest rate issue. You know, that over the last year has not helped the housing market either, has it?
No, we are still in a state of inflation, and unfortunately, our pennies are not going as far as they were.
That's for sure. Yeah, that's absolutely for sure. All right. Anything else on this?
I don't know. I don't know. I would just like to say the same thing. I hope we can get some sort of peace.
We're forgetting the comment. We're forgetting the comment.
Make wheels great again. Yes. Yes.
I don't have to be made great again. I'm already great and shining all the time.
I'm going to be MAGA North, right? Make Dave great again.
MACA. Make Canada great again.
Yeah, it could be. Yeah. So anyway, I don't think I would sure like to meet Donald Trump. I don't think I'd ever vote for him, but and I think his only hope is to zoom in on the economy and the wars, the forever wars that Biden has got himself into, and his weak response to Gaza. But other than that, I don't know. The momentum seems to be in Harris's court. We'll see if that continues.
Well, I'm still uncertain about this. I do not believe. I can't predict who's going to win.
I don't believe the polls, because the polls the last two elections have been wrong. The polls said Hillary Clinton was going to win, and she got clobbered.
Oh, I never ever believed Clinton was going to win. Clinton versus Trump was a loser every way you could possibly think about it. That Clinton's comes from, Clinton is one of these. We talk about it.
Well, okay. Well, my point basically was, like, the polls said that she was going to win in 2016. She did not.
No.
The polls said that Joe Biden was going to win by much wider spread than he did in 2020.
Yeah.
So the polls were wrong, and the Republicans have instructed their followers not to respond to polls. So you don't really know, because they don't want. They just said they'll be skewed. So the Republicans and Republican supporters will say that it will not respond to polls at all. So we really don't know the full strength of the Republicans.
Yeah.
And a friend of mine in the States told me that he was talking to a Trump supporter, and the guy says, "I hate Trump. I hate Trump completely. I dislike the guy utterly, but I hate the Democratic position much more." So there's another aspect.
Yeah. And again, the last election, it wasn't so much Biden winning; it was anti-Trump winning.
Exactly. That's what people don't realize.
Yeah,
people didn't vote for Biden. They thought of him as a continuance of Obama. That was part of what helped him. But and so he had the Obama and the anti-Trump thing. And Trump won a squeaker in 2016, and he lost a squeaker in 2020. And I think this one coming up is very potential of a squeaker, particularly if the economy takes in more of a dive before the election.
Yeah. Well, and yeah, I'm not predicting at all. I'm staying well away from that prediction.
In 2016, I didn't know who was going to win, Hillary or Trump. And then I was driving to a friend of mine's house, and I heard that the stock market was exploding because of the anticipation of Hillary Clinton winning. So that I made that as my decision. Oh, okay, it must mean that Hillary's going to squeak out a victory.
Yeah.
But it wasn't a surprise in the morning when Trump had won.
I knew she wasn't going to win. And the reason I knew she was not going to win is because essentially the Democrats at that time were completely out of touch with the base vote that Trump encouraged.
Oh, they certainly were. They misinterpreted the polls completely.
Yeah, absolutely, they did.
Yeah. But anyway, there's an election coming up, and we're going to have to deal with it. We're Canadians. We have no vote. We have no irons in the fire. I think it's kind of.
But it's okay. But it's okay. It's okay, Dave. You know what we have to do at the next Canadian issue. We have to build the wall to stop the Americans coming in.
If Trump gets in, we're going to be. The amount of refugees that are going to cross the border is going to be insane. The last time he got in, we had an influx of people from the States, if you remember. Yeah. We're afraid they're going to. He's saying he's going to get rid of 11 million illegals. Where do you think a couple of million of those illegals are going to come if he gets elected? They're going to come chase right across our border. I don't know what we're going to do with them.
Yeah. All right. Okay. So I think we can give it a call it a day at that point.
Okay. Without further ado, I bid you do. Let's pray for peace.